Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's a little scary.
We may see more evacuation alerts and more evacuation orders in the days ahead.
Wildfire evacuees hope for better news as crews stay busy in BC.
They're the reason our property is still here.
And volunteers step up to help them. Plus, a BC judge says unacceptable court delays led to a charge being stayed against a man accused of sexually assaulting a 6-year-old girl. And Vancouver Council says it will put up suicide prevention fencing on the Granville Street Bridge, but that could take years.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Hundreds of people have been displaced from their homes, and thousands still remain on evacuation alert as wildfires burn across this province. More than 430 active blazes are burning now. That's for the BC Wildfire Service, most of them sparked by lightning. As Katie DeRosa reports, with strong winds in the forecast for parts of the interior, the province remains on high alert.
Our main concern is our chickens.
Lucy Jeffrey is staying as positive as she can. She and her family were forced from their home in Wells on Sunday because of the Antler Creek wildfire. They're now in Quesnel, hoping and waiting.
At the moment, I'm thinking it's a really big fire, and yeah, I don't see it being put out in the next couple of days because it's like 140 square kilometers.
Other evacuees are putting their faith in wildfire crews.
Sprinkler systems have been set up on every building in Barkerville. They're doing everything they can. There's crews on the ground fighting the fire in Barkerville.
The mayor of Wells says fire has destroyed some homes in his community, a small mining town in the Caribou.
I'm aware of two homes that have been lost.
BC's emergency management minister could not confirm the number of homes lost due to wildfires, but she warns that strong winds in the forecast for parts of the interior could fan the flames.
And we may see more evacuation alerts and more evacuation orders in the days ahead.
More than 500 people have been forced to flee their homes, and 5,000 British Columbians are on evacuation alert.
Fortunately, that is down from 7,000 people from just yesterday, as the evacuation alert in Williams Lake has been lifted now that the River Valley wildfire is under control.
Most evacuations are due to the Antler Creek wildfire near Valemont, the Shetland Creek blaze in the Venables Valley, and the Alwyn Creek and Comonco Creek wildfires in the Kootenays. Meanwhile, the federal minister for emergency preparedness says international help is on the way.
So we do have support coming from Mexico, South Africa, and support from Australia and New Zealand has already arrived to help fight the wildfires.
Premier David Eby says the province has improved its emergency assistance program. Evacuees can now sign up online for support and quickly get an e-transfer of $200 per day if they have to flee.
So we do have improved systems for evacuees to be able to access resources such as housing and money for food when they have to leave.
Those improvements come after problems during last summer's devastating wildfire season. Many evacuees complained it was too complicated to receive emergency help. Eby also says the government has improved communication between provincial wildfire fighters and municipal crews. And for the first time, firefighters battling blazes in the dead of night will be equipped with night vision goggles. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
Let's turn now to the biggest wildfire burning in BC near the village of Ashcroft. That community is under alert and has been living under the shadow of that blaze and others for some time now. Our Michelle Gassoub has more on how people there are coping. Michelle, first of all, what is the latest on that blaze?
Yeah, Dan, this is the Shetland Creek fire, the largest wildfire in our province right now. One of 4 wildfires of note. It's currently deemed out of control and has led to 4 evacuation orders and 6 evacuation alerts. Among those under alert, the communities of Ashcroft and Cache Creek. The mayor of Ashcroft says this is a community that has lived under the threat of fire before. Dan, you'll remember 2017, 2021. So people there, they know how to prepare. They're now focused on using sprinklers on some of the more exposed homes to create a moisture barrier wherever they can.
And the sprinklers are not to put the fire out. they create a humidity bubble around the building, so it's like a moisture barrier so that those embers don't get through, so that the fire is lazy. If it encounters something that it can't burn, it will find something else.
The mayor also shared that residents of a long-term care facility have been moved out of the community as a precaution. That's because some of those residents have health complications, and if Ashcroft is ordered to evacuate, they want to minimize the stress on some of those older people. Now, a pharmacist in Ashcroft also told us people are preparing by making sure they have their prescriptions in case they need to leave town.
I noticed on Friday, as soon as the alert came out, people were coming in, making sure they had their scripts and bringing their renewals, making sure they were getting their medication. But since then, people are pretty calm.
Michelle, we've heard people are organizing to help those working on the front lines. What are they doing?
Yeah, so people in that community heard that some provisions that wildfire fighters were expecting from the government hadn't yet arrived, so they got to work. They're making sandwiches, preparing meals. They've had 62 people today. They plan on feeding 100 people tomorrow. They're also providing other supplies.
So while they're fighting the fuels of the fire, they're not being refueled themselves. And Jan, one of our volunteers, her nephew is on the fire line, and he said they needed socks. So it was just amazing this morning. I mean, one of the firefighters was so happy. He said, "This is my last pair of socks I was down to." So they came right on time for him.
Now, Dan, that fire has really been impacting Highway 1 because it is just on the flank of that road. It's very visible to people driving by, and the highway was closed between Sunday and Monday. It has since reopened, but they warn it could close again on very short notice, especially because, again, that fire is still classified as out of control. So if you are traveling that stretch, keep in mind it will be very smoky, and that highway could close with very little warning. Dan?
All right. The CBC's Michelle Gassoub reporting. Thank you very much. The Old Man Lake fire north of Sooke on Vancouver Island has now grown to nearly 170 hectares and is categorized as out of control. It was discovered on Monday near Sooke Potholes Provincial Park. The wildfire was just 1/5 the size as of Tuesday. Smoke from the fire was visible in parts of Greater Victoria. This morning, the air quality index in some places was 7 out of 10. Environment Canada recommends people in the area limit any outdoor exercise and consider air filters indoors. Now, if you have pets, you know how hard it can be to quickly move them in case there is an emergency. That's no different during a wildfire evacuation. An animal shelter in Kamloops run by the volunteer-based Canadian Disaster Animal Response Team, or CDART, is trying to make life a bit easier for pets and their parents fleeing the flames.
Ideally, people want to keep their animals with them, and that's better for everybody. But if they can't, at least they've got a safe alternative where they know their animals will be well cared for.
CDART says keeping animals sheltered in a cool place should be priority one as owners, if owners who are forced to evacuate. Meanwhile, the wildfire situation in and around Jasper, Alberta is turning grim. Parts of the South Fire are reaching the edge of that community. And park officials say they're now moving first responders to a town to the north. Still, some firefighting personnel, aircraft, and a small number of incident command staff will stay to protect Jasper. As Kyle Bax explains, more than 10,000 people have been forced to flee, most of them coming here to BC.
Some evacuees from Jasper are staying at campgrounds and RV parks throughout this area. They either plan to stay a while to wait out the situation or make a quick stop before heading towards southern Alberta.
You know what, you figure it out. And like other people have said, it's like a big adventure, you know. Nobody's hurt, and I haven't heard of anybody getting hurt.
A pair of wildfires continue to threaten Jasper, both out of control from the north and south, as close as 5 kilometers from the town site.
All high priority trails and campgrounds have been swept. 245 people have been picked up or contacted in our backcountry trails.
The larger wildfire, estimated at nearly 11,000 hectares, Parks Canada officials say the fires are burning aggressively.
We do anticipate that if we receive the precipitation, we will see a reduction in fire activity. However, the rain doesn't count until it's on the ground, and there isn't enough rain in this forecast to control the wildfire.
Persistent strong winds are fueling the flames, creating challenges for frontline firefighters on the ground and in the air. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Kamloops.
Let's bring in meteorologist Russ Lacades in for Darius Madavi this week. Russ, watching that situation, Jasper, closely. Grim words we hear from the firefighting officials. The rain doesn't count until it's on the ground.
Yeah, it's a really good quote. I was just reading some of the updates from the Jasper Park warden with the federal parks. And it sounds terrifying. I mean, they've got ash raining down across the region right now. And a reason for that is so many active wildfires very close to the BC-Alberta border, as well as those that are right in the Jasper vicinity. The jet stream aloft, the wind at the mountaintop elevations, is directly from the southwest, and it's steering all of the additional ash and the smoke right across the Jasper community currently. I want to bring this up just to show you what we're anticipating to occur in and around the Jasper Park region about 24 hours from now. It's a race against time. Over the northern part of the province, the difference between Monday and today, we've seen our fire danger rating dropping down by, in many cases, 2 categories. So that's really welcome news. How did that happen? Well, the amount of rain we had over the northern part of the province over about the last 24 hours, give or take, was between 15 and 25 millimeters, and that really brought the danger rating down. Of course, it's not enough to put the fires out, but it can help to eliminate further fire starts and also give the firefighters a leg up on sort of controlling what they're working on right now. I'll show you quickly what we're looking at currently. This is our satellite shot. There are numerous active thunderstorms moving through the central interior towards the Peace. Heavy downpours in this region. Cooler air coming along. The jet stream is actually inducing a little baroclinicity here, and we're seeing some rain aloft over Jasper already. I think it starts raining around 10 o'clock this evening. It's legitimately a race against time. How much rain will they get? Well, what we expect to occur between now and, say, around the midnight hour, maybe a few millimeters worth. Beyond that, so 24 hours from now, we're talking about 15 to 25 millimeters of rain in Jasper. If only it could get there a little sooner, we might have a chance to salvage some of the community.
Okay. Russ, we'll check in later. Thanks very much.
You bet.
To other news now, a BC judge has issued a searing ruling. The Victoria Provincial Court Justice says unacceptable delays in BC's court system have forced the staying of a criminal charge against a man accused of sexually assaulting a 6-year-old girl. As Jason Proctor tells us, the delays pushed the trial beyond an 18-month limit set by Canada's highest court.
So this case involves a 6-year-old girl who was allegedly sexually assaulted in December 2021. The child's mother went to police, and almost immediately the man accused of this crime goes through his lawyer to the Crown to say, I want to deal with this as expeditiously as possible. But what we've found out from this court ruling is that is not what happened at all. It took more than 3 months to assign a Crown counsel to the case. There ultimately were scheduling delays, including time or problems booking the time of a semi-retired judge who was overseeing the case. And when it sort of did finally start going through the process of going to trial over a number of days, over months, what started as a prosecutor saying she would need 1 hour with the mother of the child, that 1 hour turned into a day and a half. The Supreme Court of Canada has set a limit on the amount of time that you have to hear a case in provincial court, which is 18 months. That's considered a ceiling, not a floor. And as the judge in this case tallied everything up, he ultimately found that it did not meet that, and so had to throw the case out, stay the proceedings, the charges, because of delay. That has raised the ire of critics of the government who say this is an administration of justice problem, and specifically a problem managing the resources of the court. Delay is an issue you hear about all the time in the courts. And as I say, the judge in this case said, you know, this case, the alleged sexual assault of a 6-year-old child should be the highest priority this court can deal with, and that no child this child is now going to be nearly 9 years old, should have to deal with this for 3 years, fully half or a third of their life by the time that this comes to trial. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police in Vancouver are still looking into 2 different cases of 2 women found dead on beaches around English Bay.
We do not believe criminality was a factor. However, and that's the case of the woman who was found on Kitts Beach on Monday afternoon. However, in the first case, the woman who was found Sunday morning at Sunset Beach, we're still conducting investigation. We're still working with the coroner service, and we have not yet determined how she died or whether or not her death was the result of a crime.
Investigators have determined the two deaths are not connected. The first body was found Sunday morning at Sunset Beach, and the second found Monday afternoon near the Kitsilano Yacht Club. The VPD has identified the two women and told their families they are not sharing their names. Vancouver City Council has now voted unanimously to streamline part of the city's transit network. An opposition councillor wanted to address delays and overcrowding on some of the city's busiest bus routes. Our Michelle Morton has more on this story. Michelle, what's this all about?
Dan, one city councillor, Christine Boyle, brought forward this motion. It includes 8 corridors identified as some of the city's busiest bus routes in TransLink's bus speed and reliability report. She says all-day bus lanes are one of the fastest and most cost-effective ways to improve public transit.
The more that we can introduce measures that improve bus speed and reliability, the more people who are going to choose the bus when it works for them, which is a benefit for people who are driving too, because it reduces vehicle traffic.
So dozens of speakers attended or called into a public meeting, including students from out of town who commute in. Some raised concerns about how long their commutes are, along with overcrowding, but also air pollution and climate change. Council eventually passed Boyle's motion unanimously after ABC councillor Sarah Kirby-Young suggested they include a motion she brought to council last October. It prioritized 5 congested routes, 4 that were included in Boyle's motion, plus Granville Street. And Kirby-Young says work has already started.
We have a work plan. Our staff are fully on it, and that should all complete by 2026. So that's a pretty good, significant amount of work done in 2 years. And people will see, for example, the early work on Granville Street completing next year.
Now, as for how they're going to operate and look, it depends on where they're located.
It really does depend how built up an area it is and if there are other uses, whether it's restaurants, patios, those kinds of things. So I think the design tries to really be sensitive to that.
As for what's next, Kirby-Young says the city has secured $11 million in TransLink funding by the new year for these lanes, and they'll be looking at seeking additional funding to support these additional corridors. Dan.
Michelle Morton reporting for us tonight. Thanks, Michelle. City Council also says it will install suicide prevention fencing along the Granville Street Bridge, but that could be years away. The city says there are challenges securing the millions of dollars it says it needs to get the barriers in place. Police say the Granville Bridge had the second highest number of calls linked to suicide or mental health issues last year. Members of the Granville Island community shared the grief and upset of some of those calls.
It's devastating. The guy that jumped in front of the creek house, I was there when he jumped. I was on the front porch. You can prevent that.
The Crisis Centre of BC says the decision does not address the urgency of the issue, and while the city is demonstrating its dedication to the crisis, it would have liked council to prioritize immediate safety on the span. In another significant outcome, City Council has voted 6-5 in favor of restoring the natural gas option for heating and hot water and new home construction. Advocates argue that decision will help with housing affordability, though critics argue the gas ban repeal will push up energy costs instead.
What it does mean is more upfront cost and kind of logistics for the builders. And I think that's really what was driving this, was sort of the developer interest rather than the consumer interest. So.
The bylaw amendment was made possible by Mayor Ken Sim, who cast the tie-breaking vote on Zoom while he was on vacation. The mayor's office says the decision will help build, quote, more attainable housing faster. Still to come, days before the 2024 Paris Olympics kickoff, the Canadian women's soccer team is caught up in controversy, and it's drone-related. That story's next. With just 2 days until the Paris Olympics opening ceremony, Team Canada is steeped in controversy. The women's soccer team is grappling with the fallout after an analyst was caught spying on an opposing team with a drone. Sarah Levitt brings us up to speed.
They're the reigning gold medalists, here to defend that title. But Canada's women's soccer team will now do that under a cloud of scandal.
Well, we discovered a fair bit in the course of a very short period of time.
A member of the team's coaching squad, analyst Joseph Lombardi, arrested, charged, and sent home after admitting to flying a drone over New Zealand's training sessions to learn their tactics.
Shocked, disappointed, but I throw a few other emotions in there too. Frustrated, questioning. Like it raises all kinds of how could you questions.
Also sent home assistant coach Jasmine Mander, who was in charge of Lombardi but says she was unaware. Head coach Bev Priestman says she's still learning the details of what happened, but has removed herself from tomorrow's opening game.
Ultimately, I am accountable. That's why it was really important to me, I think, to take this moment to show strong leadership.
Canada Soccer, the International Olympic Committee, and FIFA say they're investigating. For the New Zealand team, this is a distraction.
We're controlling what we can control, and overwhelming sort of feeling of disappointment, and I know the players are feeling the same.
The question for many is, why did this happen? According to FIFA, Canada is currently ranked 8th in the world, New Zealand 28th.
It's a little bit of a mystery, isn't it? Because
Maya Jackman is retired, considered one of New Zealand's all-time greatest female footballers. She knows Priestman well.
I would not think that this was something she would condone or be a part of. She's a great coach, and she can coach without having to cheat.
For the players, concentrating on the game is all that matters.
We've worked really hard to get here as a group of players, just been looking forward to this moment for so long.
As the team tried to do just that at practice today, assistant coach Jasmine Mander was walking off the field, a solitary walk, before being driven off.
Sarah Levitt reporting. Now, this spying scandal is happening just a day before Canada's women's team is set to play New Zealand. Here's Thomas Dagley with how this controversy is playing out in Canada.
Different team, different tournament. But back in 2021, as the Honduran men's squad came to Toronto for a World Cup qualifying match, they reportedly spotted a drone flying overhead during their training and suspected Canada of spying. The response from Canada's then coach aired on Honduran media.
A lot of people in Canada that fly drones, I'm sure. And when a big team like Honduras turn up, I'm sure people are probably interested in what they're doing.
Now, Canada Soccer says an independent external review will look into the drone incidents in France, plus what it calls its historical culture of competitive ethics.
Canada Soccer is a little bit of a laughingstock right now in the global community of soccer, of how could this happen and was this necessary?
Federal Sport Minister Carla Qualtrough says the actions of those involved do not reflect Canada's values. Fans online said they were disgusted, calling the fiasco not a good look. And what an embarrassment.
It now maybe raises some questions over, well, did Canada do anything like this in winning those medals?
Remember, winning gold in Japan capped off a string of 3 Summer Olympics where Canada's women's team made the podium. Head coach Bev Priestman led them to the top then. Many wonder about her future now.
Did she know about this? And unfortunately, if she did, I feel like maybe she should be sent home.
In recent years, Canada Soccer has found itself at the center of multiple controversies surrounding leadership, pay equity, and broadcast rights. This latest fiasco comes as the National Federation has been trying to turn a corner and leave the drama behind. Thomas Dagley, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Canada's flag bearers for the opening ceremony on Friday are very fast and very strong.
I don't have enough words to explain how I feel. I don't know enough words in English to explain how I feel. It's such an honor.
I'm pumped up to be able to have this opportunity to, lead my fellow teammates and, all my Canada athletes and everybody just into the opening ceremony.
Six-time medalist sprinter Andre DeGrasse and champion weightlifter Montcharon will carry the Canadian flag during Friday's parade in Paris. Team Canada will be among 91 countries on boats moving along a 6-kilometer route through the River Seine. Live coverage of that opening ceremony will begin on CBC television starting at 10 a.m. Pacific on Friday. You can also watch on CBC Gem and cbcsports.ca as well. Still to come, the Bank of Canada cuts its key interest rate for the second time since March 2020. What that means for your wallet, if anything, next. The Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rate further to 4.5%. Governor Tiff Macklem says the overall weakness in our economy is bringing inflation down, but price pressures in some sectors are holding it up.
If inflation continues to ease broadly in line with our forecast, it is reasonable to expect further cuts in our policy rate. The timing will depend on how we see these opposing forces playing out. In other words, we will be taking our monetary policy decisions one at a time.
This is the second consecutive interest rate cut since March 2020. In April 2022, the bank began an aggressive cycle of rate hikes as it tried to ease high inflation. The inflation rate fell to 2.7% in June, but the central bank warns the path back to its target inflation of 2% could be bumpy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the U.S. Congress in Washington today, defending the war in Gaza. He's hoping to boost American support. But as Ellen Morrow explains, dozens of Democrats boycotted his speech, while thousands of protesters demonstrated outside the Capitol.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was on the defensive, using his joint address to Congress to push back on the criticism of Israel's war in Gaza.
Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home.
Netanyahu painted the conflict as part of a broader fight against Iran, which backs Hamas. He vowed total victory and repeated his position that Israel must maintain security control of Gaza after the war. He also slammed widespread protests across the U.S. against the conflict.
They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas.
As he spoke, there were thousands of protesters outside the Capitol building condemning the human cost of the war. More than 39 Palestinians have been killed, say Hamas health ministry officials in Gaza.
Stop the killing. It's not a political statement. Just stop the killing. What's wrong with that?
What's going on now in Gaza is not acceptable in any shape or form.
Netanyahu was invited to speak by the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, while dozens of Democrats chose to boycott his address over Netanyahu's conduct of the war.
To be able to mount the highest dais in the House of Representatives and be invited for a joint address of Congress is one of the highest honors that we have in the United States. And I don't think that this is an appropriate time.
Netanyahu gave little indication of progress on a ceasefire deal, referring only to efforts to free the hostages. Many Israelis have accused him of not doing enough to secure their release. Netanyahu pushed back on that.
The war in Gaza could end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, disarms, and returns all the hostages.
Netanyahu will meet with President Joe Biden tomorrow, where the months-long U.S. efforts to broker a ceasefire deal will be the main topic of conversation. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
A dire warning today from the United Nations in a new report on world hunger. It says billions of people do not have access to adequate food. And as Anna Cunningham tells us, despite that urgent need, efforts to end global food insecurity have stalled.
This United Nations report certainly does seem to paint a rather bleak outlook for the millions suffering chronic hunger globally, and also for the UN's goal to eradicate world hunger by 2030, which it now seems, according to the findings of this report, is looking increasingly impossible to achieve. It says that the numbers going hungry have barely changed over the past year. Globally, on average, 1 in 11 people faced hunger, but that is 1 in 5 people on the continent of Africa, and that's including in countries such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Yemen, and South Sudan. This is a lengthy report. It does mention Gaza. It quotes the World Food Programme's global report on food crisis for this year, saying that 100% of the population in the Gaza Strip faced high levels of food insecurity. Now, earlier this month, we did hear from a group of independent UN experts who declared that famine has now spread through the Gaza Strip. This report also says that Afghanistan and Haiti have populations facing high levels of food insecurity.
Now the situation is very challenging. We are in a worse situation today than 9 years ago when we were launching this goal to eradicate hunger by 2030. And because the world has changed, we have climate change, we have conflict, we have economic crises, we have rising inequalities.
Now, in terms of why so many people globally face hunger, the report says there are 3 factors at play. They are conflict, extreme climate and the economy, all adding to more people being exposed to hunger and food insecurity. The UN says the real key to ending hunger will come with improved financing for countries that need the most help. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
At 6:40 p.m. our time, just before, a live look at Paris and the Arc de Triomphe, where the traffic really never stops, even at almost 3:40 in the morning there. And with global temperatures around the world breaking heat records, could the Paris Games be the hottest ever? We'll tell you what the research says coming up. We have breaking news out of Alberta tonight, and an update for you. It is a grim one. Jasper National Park says as of 6:40 Mountain Time, 5:40 p.m. Pacific, a wildfire there has reached the town of Jasper. The park says the municipalities and first responders from Alberta and other provinces are continuing with efforts to protect the town. It says firefighters remain there combating numerous structural fires and working to protect critical infrastructure. Earlier this evening, Portions of the Ceasefire in the park had reached the outskirts after being driven by strong wind gusts and from the south and southeast. We know tens of thousands of people have been ordered to leave, many heading to BC before being directed back to Alberta. We'll bring you any other updates we get later in the show. Time to bring in Russ Lacate, our meteorologist, once again with the full forecast. Russ, what's the latest as what you're seeing for Jasper?
Yeah, really devastating updates there. Thank you for that, Dan. I did see something on Twitter a few moments ago that the Jasper Malign Lodge, the flames were very close to some of the structures as well. I want to talk about the change in the forest fire danger rating that's been occurring over the northern part of the province over the past couple of days, and whether or not some of that's going to translate here to the southern part of the province, where we're still being ravaged by a number of fires across the interior and so much smoke in the air as well. It's interesting to note that once that rain sort of moved across the northern part of the province, 15 to 25 millimeters yesterday, it completely eliminated all of the air quality advisories for all areas north of Quesnel. So it's really only parts of the central interior, the Caribou, all down across the south and southeast part of the province where we're still shrouded in smoke. Air quality advisories remain in effect. The severe thunderstorm warnings have been dropped for the central interior and the Peace. Some watches continue. It's going to be some downpour throughout this evening, tapering off later overnight. Then the cool air comes ashore, and that has a greater impact. Your forecast for all of your destinations across the province tomorrow, just some scattered showers for Bella Coola, about 22 degrees. Prince George looking to get 5 to 10 millimeters worth of rainfall. Williams Lake up to 15 millimeters worth of rain. Into Kamloops, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters. Jasper, 15 to 25 millimeters, but it's a race against time. Whether or not it gets there before the wildfire reaches the town, it's really touch and go. It looks like it's quite wet late this evening, overnight, and throughout the day on Thursday. Areas to the far south, picking up minimal amounts of rain, maybe on the order of a millimeter or less. Some scattered showers. It's really cooling down, though. 21 degrees versus 30 today versus 40 a couple of days ago. If you're heading down for the celebration of light fireworks for tonight, it looks pretty promising. Skies are partly clear out there. It looks fairly dry as well. Mild enough at 10 o'clock. Cooling down late overnight to maybe 13, 14 degrees, give or take. Some scattered showers in the air late overnight and early tomorrow morning. Doesn't really expect to be much more than a millimeter's worth of rain. Heading into your weekend, we have some sun. We bounce back into the low 20s across Metro Vancouver. Sunday, the cloudier of the 2 days this weekend, Dan, but early next week, a much higher likelihood of some measurable rainfall.
Okay, we wait for it. Russ, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
As athletes are making final preparations for the Paris Olympics, the Earth recorded its hottest day ever last weekend. The Tokyo Games were the hottest and most humid games we've seen so far as athletes collapsed during competition. Heather Hiscox looks at concerns and plans for keeping cool in Paris.
When you arrive here at Versailles, one of the first things you notice is this motif. It's everywhere. Louis XIV, the Sun King, which got me thinking about the sun and one of the big issues for these Olympic Games, the heat. So far, Tokyo's have been the hottest games on record. The conditions for the athletes there were torturous. Remember tennis player Daniil Medvedev saying he was dying on the court? It could be even hotter in Paris. The highest temperature ever recorded in the capital was in July of 2019, 42.6 degrees Celsius. So it's a concern for everyone, volunteers, spectators, but especially the athletes. It's tough to eat, sleep, and train well in extreme heat, let alone to compete and push their bodies to the max. Athletes have been training in the heat to acclimatize. Canadian marathoner Rory Linkletter, for example, on his YouTube channel, he talks about lengthy sessions in a sauna and overdressing for some easier runs in dark colors, tights, and long sleeves. Teams will be pulling out all the cooling strategies: ice vests, wet towels, cold sponges, even frozen balloons to help lower the body temperature. Some Canadian athletes, including Javier Acevedo, Skylar Park, and Aaron Brown, they're using cooling sheets to help get the best rest possible. Organizers might be forced to reschedule some events, as they did in Tokyo, when about 110 athletes suffered heat-related illnesses. They've already been forced to back down from one plan. When they built the athletes' village, they didn't install air conditioning. They went with a natural geothermal cooling system in the interest of reducing power consumption. Canada was one of many countries that said no thanks and vowed to bring their own portable ACs. Paris has since installed 2,500 units. Now, they might not need them just yet. The forecast for the first few days of competition has temperatures in the mid-20s, which would be ideal conditions. As the Sun King himself might say, long may they reign. Heather Hiscock, CBC News, Versailles.
Here on the Lower Mainland, we live in a beautiful part of the country, as we know, that includes a lot of access to water, be it the ocean, rivers, lakes, or streams. This week also is National Drowning Prevention Week. So our Caroline Chan went out to Kitts Beach to learn more about how we can all stay safe.
We're here on Kitts Beach in Vancouver, and I'm here with Oliver Nugent, who is with the Life Saving Society. What are we doing here today?
We're going to show you what it looks like to be drowning, because the Hollywood movies don't portray it accurately. It's not the big splashing. Sometimes you don't realize a person's drowning until you absolutely survey the scene and actually get out there to realize it. So we're going to show you what a drowning person looks like and how a rescue will happen at the beach in open water, and what the lifeguards will do to keep that person safe and themselves. This is to be a part of National Drowning Prevention Week.
If you see somebody and you think they're drowning, like what kind of things should they be assessing to see if they really are drowning and if they're able to help?
If you call out to them and they're not responding, that's not a good sign. And that would be something that you would need. And call for help. Do not put yourself in danger if you are going into a rescue. We talk about our ladder approach. Try to first talk them in, find something that floats and throw it to them. Or even if you can, just keep yourself safe and reach out to them, as long as you have a point of safety, but mostly call for help. And if you're very far out, you can also call 911, get them to come down and help, find a lifeguard, swim in lifeguard supervised areas. That's always going to keep yourself safe as well.
So you really don't want to be the person going out to save someone if you don't have that experience.
Absolutely, because everybody, if you ask children, they say, what do you do if you see a drowning person? Go out and rescue them. But that's not the thing you want to do, because you can't underestimate a drowning person, because they're going to look for a point of safety, and if your head's floating above the water, you are that point of safety, and they're going to grab onto you. And again, a small child is enough to drown me, so always just be careful. Bring something with you that floats if that's your ultimate thing, and give them the floating thing, and that's going to keep them buoyant, and then until help arrives.
Well, here's the thing, because a lot of people say, well, I'm a really strong swimmer. From your experience, do you find that that's usually a good assessment, or how would someone assess themselves?
So our Swim to Survive challenge is to roll into deep water, tread water for a minute, and swim 50 meters. So that would be what most Canadians need in order to save themselves if they were to unexpectedly fall into water. Tragically, what we've been seeing is that some of the drownings that have been happening have been people overestimating their ability. One of the most recent ones was their friends were telling them to jump in the water even though they didn't know how to swim, and unfortunately that person passed away. This was happened in Lynn Valley. So we don't want to see that happening, and so if you're not comfortable in the water, just speak up and just make sure that you are safe when you're in the water.
With these demonstrations that you're doing, do you get people asking you about like what it's like to be a lifeguard and like if they can be a lifeguard?
Yeah, we do, absolutely. We've got a few people talking to us today once we were doing our demo, asking us what we're doing, and we just wanted to raise awareness for one. And if you are a good swimmer, that's the first start about being a lifeguard. I think anybody can do it. There are some standards you need to meet, but if you continue practicing in the pool and you want to be a lifeguard, it's something that anybody can do.
Is it a high demand job? Because I know during the pandemic there were things going on, and then afterwards there was a shortage of lifeguards. Mm-hmm. Are we seeing that shortage continue, or are we seeing a new generation?
We're definitely seeing a new generation. Our numbers are up. There are still a need for lifeguards. If you try to go into your local swimming pool, you find swimming lessons are very hard to come by. So we are still looking for more lifeguards. We want people to get certified, and it also helps with the water safety and prevention. If you go back to your family and you have those water safety skills, you can teach your family how to be safe around water as well. So it's definitely something we want more people doing.
Did you start off as a lifeguard?
I actually started off as a volunteer at a lifeguard competition where I was the drowning person, and I got to experience other people rescuing me.
Can I get you in the water one more time? Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that, and I was a swimmer growing up, and I just wanted to just keep working at a pool, so this I thought was the best way to do it. And I've been doing this for 12 years, and I still love it. I come to Vancouver and still work here pretty much every year.
I think it's much harder being the drowning person.
Yeah, continuously over and over again, absolutely.
What is the goal that you're hoping to do today with the demonstrations?
We want to spread the message about safe water activities and being water smart around water. We want to prevent drowning because it's a very preventable accident. It's one of the leading causes of death in our province. And since we're surrounded by so much water, we just want people to be safer around the water. What is a main rule or advice that you would have for somebody if they are going to be next to some water? Always swim with a buddy. Take some swimming lessons. That's always the #1 way to prevent yourself from drowning. Again, there's water smart tips, and if you are not comfortable swimming, wear a PFD. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and telling us about Drowning Prevention Week. Thank you.
Coming up, CBC News gets a tour of Team Canada's home for the next 2 weeks in the Paris Athletes Village, and why some Olympians think Canada has the best house. Stick around.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Back to the games now. The Summer Olympics in Paris will be a return to normal for those who competed in the Tokyo Games in 2021 during the pandemic. The bubble is gone, and family and friends and fans are back. The athletes will also be together again, and Team Canada is making itself at home in the Athletes' Village. Adrian Arsenault was able to get inside and gives us a tour.
Some things about an Olympics thankfully rarely change. Athletes will find the rings and they'll crawl all over them. Wouldn't you if you'd worked your life for this? That's Canada's gold medal swimming phenom Maggie McNeil, by the way, bringing Canadians along on social media. Her face on a coffee, the famous cardboard beds, baguettes, of course.
I'm supposed to be eating one here with some raspberry jam. It was amazing.
It's not hard to find Canadians in the village. The red uniforms help, and so does the enthusiasm of someone like the extraordinary gymnast Felix Dulce.
You know, everything that has been put together for us athletes, I think, you know, we really enjoy it and we do very appreciate the work, and especially, I'm going to say the Canadian House probably is the best. So
Come on, how come?
Snacks. It's the best snacks in the game. Am I mistaken here?
Now I know
Very
I'm
good
with
snacks.
my people.
Yeah.
The praise for Canada's home warrants a closer look, and he's not wrong. That's a rooftop lounge. Clearly, some rooms have air conditioning where there wasn't any before, and the iconic moose is back.
I do actually.
And inside, on staff, caring for the athletes and that snack table, gold medalist trampoline gymnast Rosie McLennan. She calls herself the team's big sister.
Like having your family and friends in the city again, whether it's being able to lean on them before competition or have them there as a support mechanism or to celebrate with you after, is quite unique.
Togetherness in the post-COVID emergency days is what stands out for everyone, including the athletes who definitely stand out, Canada's giants of volleyball.
There's also going to be a good amount of spectator and other, kind of social involvement, just because I think a lot of people really look forward to the Summer Olympic Games.
Sometimes the Athletes' Village is a place where you can be introduced to technology you may have never seen before. That's probably what we're talking about right here. There are 7 of these giant structures that look like fans, in part because they are fans. This village is very close to a highway, lots of pollution, so the thinking is the fans pull in the polluted air, filter it, and then redistribute fresh air. It's an experiment, a type of pilot project. If there's any sense they will make any difference, even a little one, they might pop up elsewhere in Paris. Look carefully. You'll see this is a place wired, surveilled, and constantly monitoring the climate. There are dining halls and spots to linger on the Seine made of old parachutes. Paris seemingly trying to think of everything for young athletes about to give everything.
Adrian Arsenault in Paris. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. Michelle Gassoub will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National, with the latest on the fight to save Jasper, Alberta from wildfires. Please join her then. Good night.